Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be diving in.
So today we're tackling, well, a pretty unexpected angle, actually. It comes from an academic paper you shared.
That's right.
Looking at our, intense smartphone connection through psychoanalysis, specifically Jean Laplanche.
Yeah, it's called What Lurks Beneath, the erotic charge of the Laplanchean unconscious and the digital object. And it proposes something quite radical.
Which is?
That our bond with our phones, this really puzzling deep connection, might not just be about the apps or the content,
Okay.
but might actually tap into, well, the deepest layers of our psychic lives.
Where?
Stuff formed way back in infancy.
Wow. Okay. So our mission today is basically to unpack that, to look under the hood of everyday phone use.
Exactly. Explore how the actual rhythms and, the dynamics of using these devices might link up with unconscious sexuality. At least how Laplanche saw it.
It's about the internal world, then, what the phone kind of plugs into inside us.
Precisely. Using this maybe less familiar psychoanalytic viewpoint.
Oh, right. So to get this, we really need to start with Jean Laplanche himself. He's a major figure, I gather, someone who didn't just follow Freud, but really challenged him.
Oh, definitely. He revisited core Freudian ideas, pushed them, questioned them, a really significant rethinker.
And one big thing was Freud's focus on the phallic stage. Laplanche questioned that.
He did. He thought that maybe put too much emphasis there. Instead, he looked earlier at the infant's first intimacy with the mother. And he highlighted something often glossed over, the erotic dimension of that.
Erotic in what sense?
Well, not just for the baby. He acknowledged that the nursing breast is also part of the mother's sexual life, an erogenous zone for her. So through that closeness, something of her unconscious sexuality gets transmitted.
Okay, that feels significant. It makes it less one-sided. The mother isn't just like a passive object.
Exactly. She's a desiring subject, too. And that leads to another really radical point Laplanche made about sexuality itself.
Which was?
Well, Freud often talked about drives aiming for tension reduction, for discharge, right?
Yeah, getting rid of the tension.
Laplanche flipped that. He suggested maybe the core pleasure in sexuality isn't just the release, but it's found in the charge and tension, in the buildup, the excitement, maintaining that state.
So the pleasure is in the process, the rising feeling, not just the end point.
That's the idea. This charge and tension is key to his theory of primal seduction.
Primal seduction. Okay, what does that mean?
It's Laplanche's way of explaining how our subjectivity, our sense of self, starts. He argued our psyche gets shaped by encountering the otherness of the adult, usually the mother initially. The adult sends out what he called enigmatic messages.
Enigmatic messages, like confusing signals.
Kind of. Think about all the adult's complex feelings, their own unconscious desires, anxieties, communicated through touch, tone, care, things the infant picks up on but can't possibly understand fully.
Because it's an infant. It doesn't have the context.
Exactly. It tries to make sense, to sort of translate these messages. But the parts that are just too foreign, too adult, too charged with this unknowable adult sexuality, those get repressed.
And that forms the unconscious.
That's Laplanche's view. The unconscious isn't just innate drives bubbling up. It's formed by this encounter, by grappling with and repressing the adult's incomprehensible, erotically tinged otherness.
Wow. Okay. So our deepest sense of self is forged in trying to understand this mysterious adult world from the get-go. That's a lot.
It is.
Now, bridging that to our phones, that's the big leap the paper takes, right?
It's the core of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Because usually when we talk tech and sex, we think about,
porn, dating apps, the obvious stuff, the content.
Right, the visual content, the marketization of sex online. But this paper asks something different. It asks, what if the real deep connection, our libidinal investment,
Our psychic energy.
yeah, the energy we pour into these devices, what if it's not just about the content we consume, but about the form of how we interact, the structure, the internal feelings it triggers?
Okay, right. And this is where Laplanche's charge and tension idea comes back in, linking to the digital world.
It really clicks, doesn't it? The paper gives great examples, like just endlessly scrolling through a feed, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. Are you normally looking for one specific thing? Or aiming for a final aha moment? Usually not.
No, you're just scrolling.
You're caught in this rhythm, right?
Yeah.
Pulled along by the possibility of the next interesting post, keeping that state of, anticipation going, that tension.
Or waiting for something to load, the
Yeah.
buffering wheel.
Yes, that feeling of being suspended, waiting. Or going down a Wikipedia rabbit hole, clicking link after link.
Yeah, you're not trying to finish the internet.
Exactly. The paper argues these actions aren't really about reaching a goal or achieving discharge. The pleasure comes from maintaining that rising tension, that endless pursuit, that charge.
So the actual mechanics of using the phone, the scrolling, the waiting, the tapping, anticipating the next notification could be like echoing these really basic primal rhythms of unconscious sexuality that Laplanche described, rhythms built into us from infancy.
That's the core argument. It suggests maybe why we find these interactions so compelling, almost addictive sometimes. It's not just the dopamine hit from new info. Maybe it resonates with something much, much deeper.
That's quite a thought. It goes way beyond just screen time.
It really does. It reframes the whole relationship.
And the paper digs into dependency, too, linking it back to these early psychic states.
It does. It suggests the phone kind of helps us return to or maintain a sort of omnipotent fantasy.
Omnipotent how?
Like the way an infant might experience the world in primary narcissism before there's a clear line between me and not me. The world just seems to respond instantly to needs.
Which, yeah, our phones often feel like that, don't they? An extension of our brain or hand, instant answers, remembers everything.
Right. They feed these fantasies of mastery. All knowledge via Google, right? A feeling of knowing everything about others via social media. This perfect external memory. It props up this sense of autonomy, of being in control.
But it's a bit of an illusion because we're incredibly dependent on them.
Exactly. And the paper talks about this denial of dependency.
We don't like to admit how much we rely on them.
We often really push back against that idea. The paper links this denial to what some theorists call the male imaginary.
Not meaning just men.
No, more like a cultural pattern, often tied to traditional ideas of masculinity, this fantasy of being totally self-sufficient, independent, not needing anyone, especially not admitting that primal reliance on, say, the maternal figure. The phone lets us feel that independence, masking the actual dependency.
Until it breaks down.
Yes. That's when the denial shatters. When the network crashes, the battery dies, the software glitches.
What happens then? The paper notes the reaction isn't usually sadness.
It's often intense frustration, anger, even rage. The paper draws a parallel to the infant's fury when the breast isn't there. This supposedly perfect responsive source of everything is suddenly gone, breaking the fantasy and exposing the raw dependency.
So the phone is kind of like that early mother figure in some ways. It responds, gives answers, holds our memories, even predicts what we want with predictive text.
Yeah, it can function like that reliable, responsive entity. And this is crucial for the Laplanchean angle, just like the mother has her own unknowable unconscious. The phone has its own otherness.
Its own mystery.
Yeah, the complex code we don't understand. The algorithms, the satellites, the whole infrastructure behind the screen. That's the part we don't control. The part that can fail us, that can abandon us, disrupting that fantasy of total mastery.
Okay, let's go back to primal seduction. Is the paper actually saying the phone seduces us?
In that specific Laplanchean sense, yes. Remember, seduction here isn't necessarily abuse. It's this unequal dynamic. The adult transmits enigmatic messages. The infant tries to decode but can't fully grasp.
Right.
Apply that to the phone. There's a huge power imbalance, right?
Yeah.
It's processing power versus ours.
Totally.
And so much of how it works, the algorithms deciding what we see, the data collection, it's opaque. It's like these digital enigmatic messages we interact with constantly but don't fully comprehend or control.
And we get drawn into that interaction because it mimics those early rhythms, the charge and tension.
That's the idea. The seduction lies in being pulled into this dynamic that resonates with how our psyche was first structured. But the paper emphasizes the otherness we engage with on the phone isn't just one single thing, like just the mother figure.
It's more complicated.
Yeah, it's multi-layered, diffuse.
What are these layers then, this digital otherness?
Well, there's the sort of black box of the technology itself, the computation we don't see. Then there are the traces. We leave our photos, searches, messages. They become imbued with our own unconscious stuff, our desires, our history.
Okay.
Then there's the algorithmic version of us that gets created from our data and reflected back, like a digital double almost.
Right.
And of course, there are the actual other people we connect with through the phone.
Right.
So it's this really complex mix of technical otherness and psychic otherness, ours and others.
That really does blur the lines, doesn't it? Between me as the user and the phone as the object. It challenges that simple subject-object idea.
Absolutely. The interaction is way more fluid. The paper even suggests sometimes we take on the mother role.
Absolutely.
Like when we're carefully protecting our phone, keeping it charged, rushing to respond to its notification demands. In those moments, the phone is almost like the demanding infant, and we're the caregiver.
Huh. That's a neat reversal.
And because the phone has this inherent multi-layered otherness, it can never just be a simple passive tool for us. It's always interacting, always slightly beyond full control.
And this ties back to the feminist critique you mentioned earlier, about the mother as subject.
Exactly. By using psychoanalytic ideas that insisted the mother isn't just an object for the child, but a subject with her own desires and unconscious, it helps challenge those rigid subject-object binaries everywhere.
Including with technology.
Right. It lets us question those binaries and maybe see how they connect to wider cultural fantasies, like that denial of dependency we talked about, which the paper sort of links to certain ways of constructing the self, maybe traditionally seen as more male.
This has been, well, a really deep dive, taking us from infant psychology right into the phone in our hand.
It's pretty mind-bending stuff. But using Laplanche's framework, especially charge and tension, enigmatic messages, this idea of primal seduction by an unknowable otherness, it offers this surprisingly powerful lens for thinking about why we're so attached to and dependent on our smartphones.
And the idea is that by interacting with this complex, layered otherness of the phone, it might even push us to rethink some fundamental ideas about ourselves, about subjectivity, challenging things like that denial of dependency.
Yeah, the paper presents it more as a thought experiment, a heuristic tool, a playful way to use these theories, not like a definitive clinical diagnosis of our relationship with tech. But it definitely makes you look at your phone in a new light.
It really does. Okay, so just to recap, we've explored how our deep phone connection might tap into these fundamental structures of unconscious sexuality using Laplanche's ideas.
Looking at concepts like charge and tension in scrolling, enigmatic messages from algorithms, primal seduction through interaction, the phone sometimes acting like a mother figure, and this really complex, multi-layered otherness of the device.
It really highlights how those very early experiences might echo in surprising places, like our relationship with modern tech.
It's quite something to consider.
Absolutely. And maybe here's a final thought for you, our listeners, to chew on, building on all this. If our phones and digital devices get filled with the traces of our own unconscious through constant use, and if algorithms are busy building a kind of digital subject or profile based on all that deeply personal data, what does that actually do to the boundary between you and your phone?
Right. Where does one end and the other begin?
And taking it even further, what might this blurring mean for the nature of subjectivity itself in this digital age? As we increasingly live through and are reflected back by these externalized, algorithmically shaped versions of ourselves.